Hey everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of Warriors Gate, the fifth story of the 18th season of classic Doctor Who, starring Tom Baker as the fourth Doctor. Warriors Gate is the 114th story overall. It's 4 parts long and is written by Steve Gallagher. Warriors Gate is also the last story of the E-Space Trilogy. So the plot of Warriors Gate is as follows. Still lost in E-Space, the TARDIS is hijacked by a time-sensitive creature. It brings the Doctor, Romana, Adric, and K9 to a crumbling ruin in the lonely white void, where another ship is also stranded and in trouble. Will the TARDIS and his crew ever escape this strange other world? The answer lies inside Gallifrey, but as the Doctor soon is about to discover, not everyone wants to go home. So that is the plot of Warriors Gate. So in my opinion, I think Warriors Gate is a very good story, very well produced and very well written, but I do think it's very confusing. The production of the story was quite good. I liked how the story pretty much takes place in some white void, which is very reminiscent of the mind robber from the Patrick Charlton era, and this whole white void just pretty much represents the one big CSO room. I liked how certain aspects were like pretty much placed in the gateway, such as like the archway that was pretty much the Tharrow's home, so to speak. He can and it was in the inside was very much like an inside of a medieval abandoned medieval castle of some sorts, which looked very good. The special effects were quite good as well, especially the CSO, which beautifully captured the nothingness of the gateway, and raw sorry, Rovic's ship was very good as well. The script was quite good, and I think the direction by Paul Joyce was quite good as well. I like the plot of Warriors Gate and this story pretty much sees the Doctor escape from E-Space, which is the gateway where the story pretty much takes place in, and it was basically a midpoint between E-Space and N-Space because it had zero coordinates, so hence why it was called the Midway or something like that. But in the process, like I said the Doctor is able to escape E-Space, but in the process he loses Romana and Kanan as they decide to depart from the TARDIS and to aid the Tharrow's escape from E-Space. I'll speak about more on their departure later on, but I think there's the yeah. I like the mysterious mood the story had, which pretty much made the story more interesting. But overall, the plot was just very hard to understand what was going on. And Warriors Gate was actually based on Steve Gallagher's experience working on Granada TV. And I think he was talking about like the workers in Granada TV as well, and Granada TV, which is now known as ITV Studios today. And in addition, I do think the story was pretty much based on the slave trade, which was basically like taking people from Africa, or having them working on like slave plantations and nations. And I think there are lots of elements from the slave trade that was pretty much used for this story. The pacing was quite slow and had to rewind the DVD quite a few times to see what was going on because I think I missed some bits of it, and I think I still have missed some bits of it, but because this story was a bit tedious and a bit too confusing for me to like properly have a grasp on. I think the story also had some very memorable moments, but not as many as other stories, but they were still there. I liked how Beric was able, he was a Thar, he was able to escape from Rorvik, and his apparition pretty much entered the TARDIS and to warn the TARDIS and crew saying that I am your future and you're my past or something like that. The part 2 cliffhanger was quite menacing but quite problematic at the same time. This was when Romana was trapped in the chair. I think she was pretty much adjusted to the time winds to try and see if she can able to navigate their way out to E-Space, but then obviously I think they were the only ones in the ship, and Romano was pretty much menaced by an unknown figure, and his hand was pretty much like coming towards her face, and she pretty much had no choice but to let out like a very glass shattering scream. But it was later revealed that the figure turned out to be Laszlo, who was a Tharo that had been burnt, so he helped free Romana from her shackles, and I liked how Rokovic was defeated because he thought he can use an engine to try and escape from E-Space, but it will cause the gateway to like collapse even faster. But he does that and pretty much kills him and the rest of his crew, and whilst the rest of the Tharos escaped. So the performances of the story, which I thought were quite good. Tom Baker was excellent in the story, and as I said before, he's very much suited for the seriousness of this season. And he does have some good parts with some comedy, but there were some very serious scenes I liked. I liked how he pretty much called Birk called out Birk for the Tharos enslaving humans, saying that it doesn't really, it's not right, slavery is not right and stuff like that. Which obviously Birk pretty much understands that because he was enslaved by the humans as well. And there was also a funny scene in part two when the Doctor was being attacked by the Gundam robots. They were basically like guards for the Tharos, and they were pretty much attacked. And the Doctor tried to like attack them with an axe, but then they broke the axe handles. And then we go back to another scene. I think it was Romano and Birok, or not Birok, Romano and Horvik, and it goes back to the Doctor and the Gundam robots, and the Doctor's holding a few more broken axe handles, which I thought was quite funny. His acting in Romano's departure scene was very well done, especially when he said to her that she was the noblest Romano. Well, you were the noblest Romano of them all. I think that was a very sweet scene. When Adric asked the Doctor if Romano would be alright, and then the Doctor was like, "Alright, she'll be superb." I think the delivery on that line was delivered quite well, and I think Tom Baker was a little bit saddened to see her go, even though they were pretty much having issues on set because of their relationship and stuff like that. But I think he really did like care for her and stuff like that. But in the scene as well, the Doctor was obviously quite saddened to see Romana go, but he knew that Romana would pretty much do well without the Doctor because he taught Romana a lot of stuff, so to speak. Lala was as good as Romana, and this was her final story as Romana too. Well, and she did have some very good scenes, especially when she was in the TARDIS with Adric and she was giving him instructions on what to do. And she told Adric that I'll let you know when it's safe to come out, and when you see me doing this, that was his signal to like leave the TARDIS and follow them, which was a good thing to do. So it was a good thing to do. Though I didn't really like how she delivered the vast majority of her lines to Matthew Waterhouse. I understand he was being a bit of a prick on set, but I don't think he really deserved to be like, yeah, well, deserved to be like having his lines, receiving lines, or pretty much like condescending to him. I did post. There was a scene I actually did post on my Twitter account where she was pretty much told him that he should be the one that it was about time that he followed orders, and the way she delivered that line was very harsh and it was quite cold as well. And you can tell from her facial expressions that she couldn't stand Waterhouse. She did her departure so well, and she did her departure so well. But on the other hand, you can tell that the relationship between her and Tom Baker was quite frosty because how hasty the departure scene was, and they didn't really speak for most of the story, anyways. And they only made eye contact once. I think that was pretty much during that departure scene. Kanan was quite good in the story, and in his final story, and once again, Kanan gets put through the ringer again, and he's actually damaged by time winds, and he doesn't operate properly, and I think the gateway is it's a bit confusing how they explain the whole mirror business, because I think one side of the mirror works fine, but the other side of the mirror is a bit hazy, and K9 worked on one side of the mirror, but on the other side he didn't work quite well. So I think on the other side where he didn't work, he was just speaking in tongues, so to speak, and well, not actually speaking in tongues. He was just pretty much speaking in riddles, and then the Doctor is pretty much the one who understood what K9 was saying, which is basically saying that the gateway was basically collapsing, and no one really understood what he was saying. And finally, we have Matthew Waterhouse as Adric. He is more tolerable in the story, but he doesn't really do much other than running around talking to Kanan and making unnecessary rescue attempts to try and save Romana. He does actually succeed in making a good rescue attempt in part 4 when he pretty much gets a hold of the MC laser and threatens to pretty much shoot Warwick and his crew if they don't release the Doctor Romana, and which unfortunately Warwick does. And I thought that was a very cool scene of Adric to do, so to speak. So in terms of the side cast, we had Laszlo, the Tharo, and the other crew members of Warwick's ship, and truth be told, I didn't really care for them and they weren't too important to the script, but we did have one side character who had some importance, that was Birok. He, along with his other Tharos, were basically feline-looking humanoids that were quite time-sensitive, then this is what they looked like. So this is obviously Birok in the story, so Birok was basically like the navigator for Rover, because he was time sensitive and he wasn't really like heavily harmed by the time winds, so So he was able to escape from Rovik, and he was able to find the Doctor and Romana and Kanan and Adric, and told them about what was happening, what was going on. And he explained that the Tharos that once controlled the gateway and had actually enslaved humans, and showed the Doctor how they were enslaved by the humans. And the Beric obviously realized he was wrong for enslaving the humans, and then he helped the Doctor to escape from the ship, and he enlisted Romana to help the other Tharos escape from slavery, which is her departure scene. And I thought Beric was a very good character, and I thought he was a very important character. He pretty much wanted to help his people escape from slavery, so to speak. And our main enemy was Rorvik. He was the captain of a privateer ship and a slave trader who was responsible for transporting the Tharos. His ship ended up on the gateway, which was actually caused by Birok. Okay, then Rorvik realized that he could return to an end space from the gateway, thanks to the Doctor. Moments of back and forth later, he wanted to use an exhaust blast from the ship to try and escape from the gateway, but he didn't know, and he was actually warned that if he pretty much used that blast away, it pretty much caused the gateway to destroy it, to be destroyed, and it would eventually kill him. But he didn't. But his words fell on deaf ears, and he pretty much tried to do so, and it obviously ended up killing him and the rest of his crew. I thought he was a very good villain, and he was a very credible threat towards the Doctor and his companions. So on to the fault of Warriors Gate. I explained some of them in this review already, but to point out there are quite a few, including the plot being very hard to follow because of the slow pacing and how very confusing it was. Lala was pretty much failing to hide her contempt for Matthew Waterhouse whenever they had to share a scene together. But there was one fault I didn't actually build on, was how in this season Romana is pretty much demoted to a damsel in distress, as she's either captured, hypnotized, or subject to cliffhangers where she's in peril, and obviously Warriors Gate is the fourth story in the row where Romana is pretty much subject to a peril cliffhanger, and this was when she was she was trapped in the chair being cornered by Laszlo, who obviously we didn't see until part 3. Yes, I did say it was a very good scene, but it was a bit tiresome seeing Romana in these sort of situations again. Although it was quite cool, but I think this could have been better suited for Adric. Yes, even though he's not time sensitive, well, Romana wasn't either, even though she's the Time Lord, but now, do you feel that they could have at least had the scene with Adric in some form of peril? Because I don't think he had really any solo peril cliffhangers yet, or even during his time in the TARDIS. So yeah, that's my thoughts with Warriors Gate. So now on to the elephant in the room. The departures of Romana 2 and Kanan Mark 2. So Romana decides to leave the TARDIS because she tells the Doctor that she wants to stay in the gateway to try and help the Tharos escape from E-Space. And the Doctor pretty much gives K9 to Romana and Birok. It was a very sweet scene, but it was quite hasty as well. And Lala Ward pretty much said that she didn't like her departure scene because it was too rushed and she thought that more could have been done. But I suspect it was a very hasty scene because of the frosty relationship she had with Tom Baker, which was quite suspect because they were engaged at the time. So so yeah, but I really liked Romana. Well, both Romanas to be precise, and they were both fun additions to the main cast. And I liked and I think having Romana in part of the TARDIS team was a good idea because they pretty much bounced off each other. I know wrong choice of words, but they pretty much bounced off one another because of their chemistry. Because Romana was recent graduate from the Time Lord Academy, was pretty much the Doctor's equal, even though she was just a little bit cleverer than the Doctor, because the Doctor can come off as a bit scatterbrained, but then the Doctor came across as a bit scatterbrained, but obviously the Doctor had more experience because of his time travels, and then Romana, who never really left Gallifrey, she was used to the Gallifreyan way of living, so she wasn't really used to anything outside Gallifrey. So yes, that's how the Doctor was able to teach Romana how to do certain things, how to look out for certain people, and we definitely see how as the stories progressed with Romana, how she pretty much is learning from the Doctor, how she's pretty much applying it to the situations where she's at. And I think the Haunted Namor was a very good example of how Romana was pretty much learning from the Doctor. So we don't see her again until the Five Doctors, even though it was through footage from Shada, and she appears in Dimensions in Time, which is basically like the 30th anniversary of Doctor Who, which was pretty much a way to, which pretty much a crossover of EastEnders, so to speak. And as for K9, he was a very unpopular companion, but I love K9, both of them, and I always had a soft spot for him. Yeah, I do agree that he was a mere tool to try and help the Doctor get out of tricky situations, but although K9 was quite adorable and he was quite badass at the same time because he was able to like shoot down some of the enemies, and that was quite cool as well. I also like the bond K9 had with some of the companions, such as Leela and both Romanas, the second one especially, and John Leeson and David Brearley did K9 both did K9 justice, even though John Leeson can pretty much be is pretty much the more popular version of K9, and K9 has actually returned for his own spin off, with Leeson voicing K9 once again, and with a new K9 model, which was basically the same as the first two K9s, but this was K9 Mark III, and he was working alongside Sarah Jane Smith in K9 and Company, which aired like pretty much in the week in December 1981, pretty much just a week before Peter Davison debuted as the Doctor. When this K9 does actually return for a cameo in the Five Doctors, providing continuation from K9 and Company, and K9 Mark III's final appearance was in School Reunion in New Who, which pretty much sacrifices himself. He returns to Sarah Jane and pretty much sacrifices himself to save the Doctor and the school and to defeat the Quidditch. I'll miss K9, but I'll be reviewing K9 and Company after Logopolis. So to conclude, I think Warriors Gate is a good way to close the E-Space Trilogy, but I think it would take like a few rewatches to have a full grasp on what was going on. So I give the E-Space, sorry, I'll give Warriors Gate a 7 out of 10. My next review will be The Keeper of Track and the penultimate story of season 18 and the penultimate story of the Tom Baker era overall. And this pretty much kicks off a new trilogy for Doctor Who, the Master Trilogy or the New Beginning Trilogy. So thanks for watching this review. Please let me know your thoughts of Warriors Gate and this review. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and follow me on the social media websites below in the description box. Until then, see you later.